I paid just €40 for this smart speaker, but was it a grave error? Stay tuned to find out. Hey, I'm Nish, and this is a smart speaker which was made by a company called Meridian, but then LG decided to stick their label on it. It's the XBOOM WK7. Now, when this came out in 2018, it cost around €200 or £200, but I recently picked one up in basically new condition for about €40 or about £35, which is kind of insane. I'm going to put this down now because it's a little bit awkward. This is a smart Wi-Fi speaker which has a pretty understated dark grey black colour, kind of giving off Mac Pro vibes. It measures 20 centimeters high with a 13 centimeter diameter and weighs about 2 kilos. The main UI is on the top. You've got some touch buttons for play, pause, volume up and down. There's also a button to call up the Google Assistant, though you can also use the catchphrase. Inside, we've got a 30-watt driver and tweeter. So this is a front-facing speaker. It's not going to be omnidirectional like some smart speakers on the market. Before I talk about the features of the speaker, do subscribe if you like what you're seeing so far. I'd really appreciate it as it helps the channel grow and the video to get out there. So I mentioned this is a smart speaker, and for those who don't know what that means, it basically means you can connect this up to your Wi-Fi and it has the Google Assistant built in, which means you can ask it questions like, what's the weather and whatnot. You can also connect to it as a normal Bluetooth speaker. It has the 4.2 standard built in. There's a button on the top which lets you switch between the modes for pairing, but once you have it paired up and set up, you can actually automatically switch which mode it's on depending on what device you try to connect to it with. Now, I believe with the Google Home app, if you had two of these speakers, you could potentially link them up in a stereo mode, but as far as Bluetooth only goes, you're not able to do this. LG have not included any kind of capacity for that kind of pairing. I would say the catchphrase Google, I'm not going to say it now because it will trigger all your devices, that functionality works reasonably well. I think the detection isn't quite as good as I've seen in Google's own speakers, such as the Nest Audio, etc. You can mute the mic if you don't want Google to listen to you, by the way. Before I move on to talking about pros and cons, let me know in the comments your favorite tech bargain find, because I think it's sometimes quite impressive the kind of things you can find secondhand or things that are much cheaper than they really should be. So yeah, let me know, I'd be interested. So to start with the pros, well, there's really only one, and it's maybe the most important thing considering this is a speaker. I think the audio quality on this is pretty darn good, especially when I consider the amount I've paid. There's a really good resolution and fidelity to the sound, there's a reasonably punchy bass, and I find the highs really pleasing. Now, the only minor gripe is that the mids are a little bit removed, so the sound is a little bit thin, it's a little bit on that higher end, but for me, I find it quite pleasant to listen to, and I think it's the kind of thing where if you listen to a speaker for a while, you'll get used to its unique signature. One important thing to note is this was after I disabled the enhancements that LG have put on this speaker. So one of the enhancements was enhanced bass, which I just found it blew the bass completely out of proportion and sounded horrible. Maybe good if you want a party and you want something to rumble, but otherwise just turn it off. And there's another one called clearer vocals, which didn't really make any vocals any clearer, but it just added a weird equalizer to the sound, and personally I wasn't a big fan. As for cons, there are quite a few minor ones. While I'm on the topic of those sound enhancements, one of the issues is you have to get an app to change those settings, and I thought, there's the LG XBOOM app. I spent about half an hour trying to get that set up and it just wouldn't connect. So I ended up finding the APK for the old discontinued LG Wi-Fi speaker app, and that was much easier to set up. So just a little tip there. As far as the app goes, there's really nothing in it. The settings are quite limited, so there isn't a detailed equalizer. That would have been nice to see, because it's nice to be able to tune the frequencies to something that sounds good in your room. So yeah, limited customizability and a limited app. Apart from that, connection-wise, it would have been really nice to see a wired connection backup. Now, I say this because I want to use the speaker with my PC as well as general casting music to speaker sitting there. And one of the annoying things is with Bluetooth 4.2, I do notice there is a little bit of latency. So if you're watching like a video with someone speaking or watching a TV show or film thing, then you will notice a slight delay with the audio arriving a little bit later. Now, if you're watching a lot of things, with some programs like VLC Media Player, you can add a lag in there to account for any kind of delays like that. But that's a lot of effort, and if you just had a wired connection, then you wouldn't need to worry about that. It is worth noting that Bluetooth 5 reduces latency a lot compared to Bluetooth 4.2. I'm not sure why they included 4.2, because by my calculations, Bluetooth 5 had been out for 2 years when this speaker came out, but maybe they were trying to cut costs or whatever. I did also try using the Wi-Fi speaker functionality, like you can cast from Google Chrome on a laptop, for example, to a speaker like this, but there was even more latency, so that's not a solution to that. So after all those cons and gripes, well, only two, but they do outnumber the pros 2 to 1. Would I still recommend this speaker? Well, I think always you have to consider the use case. Now, I think this is a really good cheap speaker to put in the corner if you just want to cast music to it every now and then. I think the sound quality is really good. It gets really loud without much distortion, and I think it provides a pretty good listening experience. If you want to use it as an all-in-one like PC speaker as well, just be aware of the fact there is a bit of latency. I mean, some people, you might not even notice it. It might not be something you're that fussed about. For me, I'm kind of on the fence. I'm kind of learning to live with a little bit of latency, but maybe I'll get a traditional set of PC speakers at some point. What I would recommend having a look at is the Nest Audio, not the tiny ones, the kind of larger one. That only costs a little bit more than this. I've seen that for about 50, 60 pounds or so, and that does have Bluetooth 5.0, which I think would reduce that latency down to a pretty imperceptible level. Is imperceptible a word? You know what I mean? So that could be another option if you want something with a little bit less latency, but it still doesn't have a wired connection. And I think generally not many of these smart speakers do, because they're designed to be, this thing sitting in the corner connected wirelessly. So that is everything I wanted to talk about with this speaker review. I hope it's been useful. Let me know if you have this speaker. Let me know what you think of it, or if you have an alternative that you think people should check out. Put that in the comments. Thanks again for watching. Please do subscribe to stay tuned for more reviews and tips and tutorials and that kind of thing. By the way, I do have a channel where I have some music stuff. If you're interested in seeing some of that, check out the link there. Otherwise, I'll catch you in the next one.